Welcome to the SPL Rundown, your weekly look at the Smite Pro League. This week, Frost and I, your host Apam, are joined by two special guests. We have caster extraordinaire Myflin, who joins us, and former SPL mid, current SEC mid superstar mid laner from Belt Slap Zyrhoes is here as well.
Whoa. This was way better.
Hey, I said caster extraordinaire, right?
Hold on, I'm gonna redo mine. Former SPL jungler, console world champion, and current caster. Boom.
Sure.
Got
so
it.
long ago.
Hey, shut up about that.
Be sure to stick around for my interview with the king himself, the jungler for Radiance Adapting, joins me. But first, we had a pretty short week of games with some postponed sets. So let's get started with the first set of the week, which was Ghost versus United. I think all the sets this week were very quick. Especially this Ghost vs. United set. 26 minutes for the first one. A little bit longer for the second one, but I think Ghost handily took care of this United team. What are you guys' thoughts initially on this Ghost vs. United set?
That was like the biggest support diff there. It was literally PBM running down Gino.
Yeah.
To the point where Gino had to build the most defensive Kuzembo I've ever seen in my life. If you're going to do that, you draft like a Sobek or something. Just not Kuzen. I don't know what that was for him.
Sure.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think it also came down to solo lane. United, right? They've got Baskin. They picked him up. They expected him to come in as this absolute powerhouse out of the short lane.
Mm-hmm.
And we really haven't seen him really diff a solo lane. We always talk about the intangibles on the cast. Baskin's a shot caller. He helps out a lot with Scream. And we got to really hope that that's the case because he is getting absolutely bodied right now. There was a point in that set in particular where me and Finch went absolutely off on the cast. Baskin is walking down Panda Cat on his own back camps, on Panda Cat's back camps.
Yep.
Just W-keying at this man. He takes 40 auto attacks to the face. Me in my head, all right, any second now. Master's Will, 72 transformations, Jiggy Bang. Nothing happens. Baskin just absolutely dies. He eats garbage. I can only assume Panda Cat was laughing at him.
Yeah.
And I just had no clue. And from there, I never saw Baskin have another impact on a team fight. It just really feels like he's struggling.
That's just because ADCs are so OP though, man. Like, I'm telling you, it's the best role in the game right now. Like, they need to nerf the ADC. Like, every day I stream, I keep saying it, like, the ADC actors are so OP, man. Like, so I can't blame Baskin for that.
Yeah, Atalanta's bow is in a nuts spot right now. We got
what about Obo, 2.1k gold?
Yeah. It also seems like any ADC build, like you can build crit if they don't build Spectral, you can build this attack speed build, you can even build like the power build, like Trans is not dead on Hunters either. It seems like the build diversity has really exploded, especially since the mid-season patch.
And
yeah, you can literally build anything.
The same two Hunters over and over.
Sure, same two Hunters, but the builds can vary, I feel like, game to game.
Yeah, if you've got Jingwei on your team, maybe Barracuda builds a little bit of crit. If you've got Zapman building with the Berserker's Shield, which is just another version of the attack speed build.
Sure.
I think right now with the meta leaning a little bit more so towards a strong front line with supports almost acting as a secondary jungler.
Frontline versus ADCs in the game, sure, man.
Yeah, now we got kin size, attack speed. Like, you're a chainsaw come late game as ADC. But that role and all the players inside that role, I'm looking at Zapman, I'm looking at Barracuda, Panda Cat. They love complaining, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is why every single year, ADCs are getting stronger and stronger and stronger, while mid laners and junglers are kind of falling by the wayside just a little bit.
You know,
mid laners usually start pretty strong in the start of the year, but then ADCs complain so much that they're weak and mid laners are strong. So like at the end of the year, ADCs are super OP and mid laners are just like probably the worst role almost.
Sure. I'm just gonna channel my inner Zapman and just say nerf Thorns, you know?
Yeah, we need a nerf Thorns again.
I agree with that. actually. So.
It's because Thorns is so unfun. You don't want to get punished for landing your own abilities.
Yeah,
exactly.
I worked hard and I got punished.
Yep.
It's like Nike in an item, though. You try to fight back, just another middle finger comes up. It's over for you.
Hey, at least we got Thorns, or not Thorns, Sunder for Nike nowadays. Or even Ankh kind of deals with her a little bit.
That is true, yeah. Any final things about this Ghost vs. United set before we move on towards the Renegades versus Obey?
Let me look at I have the stats pulled up here. I know Harrowwind kind of popped off on Toff in the second game, right? It did a lot of damage, yeah.
insane. There was one team fight where he put out like 10,000 on his own. Everyone
That's
on
the last
Ghost was
fight, right?
10%. Yep.
That's the last fight. And then they were kind of holding back, but then he dashed in, I think, and went for like a hero play to kill off, I think it was Sam or something, and then he died and they just lost the game. But
Yeah, I think he had to go for that though, with everyone being so low and it was only him.
I'm pretty
and
sure.
who else was
Could they
alive
not just
there?
have held back and defended the Phoenixes? I don't know. I mean, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. It's hard to say, especially considering like how late in the game was. It was like 50 seconds left and all of his team responding as well. So I think that had they allowed them into the Titan room, it would have been very hard to stop that dive from happening or even the Titan from falling.
Yeah,
so he had to like push it while he had the lead.
All right, well, moving on then. The Renegades versus Obey. Another 2-0. I think you'll see a theme this week in 2-0s in the league. But Renegades really looking strong. Obey kind of faltering in this one, I think. You know, the tanks stay the same for Renegades in both these sets, and Bara, I think, had a very good set. You know, we see a lot of Guan Yu, I think, was the solo of choice for Variety. Is that just because he's one of the best divers? You know, that ult does a lot of work, I think, if you're trying to dive the backline. What are you guys' thoughts on Renegades versus Obey?
I think on Guan Yu specifically, I think like he's one of the solo laners that can do both. He's really good at diving, obviously. If you have targets that doesn't have dashes and stuff, like you jump on the horse and you just go to town, you know. But he can also play really well with the backline with his healing and stuff. So like, I think Guan Yu is pretty solid. I'm not 100% sure how his laning phase is against some of the picks, like if he has pressure or not. But I think his pressure in solo lane is pretty good now. In EU as a mal, at least, Guan is a pretty popular pick now. Like a lot of people play it and they have a lot of success with it. So just for Guan Yu, I think it's a solid pick right now.
Yeah, I can agree with that completely. As well as just having that additional healing within elongated fights around objectives is super useful. The issue with Obey, and I think it became very glaring in this set, is that some of the players, and I hate doing it because he gets so much trash talked on him already, but Inbound in particular, not having certain gods within his god pool is such an issue because it allows teams like Renegades to kind of control the picks and bans. We've only got to see Inbound play Yamoja 1 week, and it was awful. I think I was on the desk for that week, and I literally said, I don't want him to see him play this pick ever again. He's incapable of it. He's only taking it so that the other team doesn't have it. You might as well dedicate a ban towards it. And then we get into that set where Variety picks up the Guan Yu, and we know that Inbound has a very good Ymir, who has a very strong counter matchup in a Guan Yu as well. Cavalry Charge is very easily counterable by that wall because the turning radius is so steep. If he goes in, you juke immediately towards your own teammate. Ymir drops a wall. All of a sudden, Guan Yu's ultimate is worthless. And he just kind of ignores that counter matchup and goes to whatever he feels like at that time. I don't know. I think that the main weakness of Obey right now is the duo lane in general. Just the support sometimes will either do par for the course or he'll be the reason they lose. I've never seen a game that has been 100% Inbound diffed. And I think that's a huge issue as well, just matched up with the fact that Wowie in particular is one of the most passive hunters in the league. Wowie will never lose you a game. He'll also never win you a game. He'll have good stats if his team is winning, but it's almost always off the back of Sino and Wolfie out of that mid lane if they're able to find their combos together. And I think that when your route to victory is so one note like that, teams can really hone in and make sure that it doesn't really work out for you. Obey needs to diversify how they want to win the games.
Yeah, I think Obey didn't they have a couple of weeks when they played, I think Wolfie played a lot of Raw.
Yeah.
Sino played a lot of Erlang, and they had they played really well, and they won some games, like even against some top teams, I'm pretty sure. But then again, going back to the Ymir pick, which I think is kind of interesting, I think he has a spot. Sometimes it's a very situational pick. Like if you want to like last pick your support for some reason, I don't know why you would ever want to do that. But like if you do, then sure, he can probably have good matchups. But like I feel like they kind of forced the Ymir pick pretty early for the most part, right? Like he really likes, like he thinks it's really good or whatever.
He
but
does
like,
think it's very good.
Yeah, looking at it now, like when he picked it, he was against Persephone and Hu Yi, which is two. Like I think for Ymir to be good, you need to be able to wall off at least. I counted jungle as a carry, right? So like ADC, mid, jungle are the carries. I think you have to at least be able to wall off 2 carries that can't get through the wall. But I mean, he's against Persephone and Hu Yi, which both can just get through the wall without any issues, right? He's against the Erlang jungle, which he can wall off, sure. That's not too bad. But I mean, I just don't think it's enough. And then even when Ymir has a good matchup where you can wall off, say you're against Hera and Cupid, for example, like 2 carries, you can both wall off. Even then, they can both turn on you very fast, and like
Sure.
you can kill an Ymir so fast. So even when you think Ymir has a good matchup, I think most of the time you can just blow him up anyway. So I don't personally think Ymir is a very good pick. Obey seems to love it for some reason, but
Well, I can
yeah,
give
it's
you
kind of
some.
weird that they prioritize it
What
so
you
much.
laughing about there, Myflin?
I can give you some insight into why Obey love it, because I was able to ask Inbound about that specifically. I want to say maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago when I was able to interview him for my show, and he was just very adamant that the wall is OP, and if you're able to get a good wall, it basically changes the team fight in a way that can really swing towards your favor. And he thinks that no matter, you can get pressure in the early game. Yeah, none of that matters. Late game walls are some of the most OP things you can do in Smite in terms of both team fights and also, sieging and things like that. So he was really just focusing on the utility of the wall from Ymir more than some of the other things. And I think what doesn't hurt him is the fact that in the early game, he can still provide pressure. His clear is very good, very safe as well, I feel. So that was what Bobby said.
I think it depends on when he gets picked.
I agree with that too.
He also went 0-6 on it last week, though. So I think that him saying that he shouldn't be concerned about the early game is the worst mindset that Obey can have in general, because early game is the only thing that they have going for them as a team. Coming from the biggest Obey stan on the planet, literally wearing their hoodie right now.
Yeah.
It all comes from love. I absolutely love Bobby. But that's such a weird mindset to have, especially considering that the Frostbite passive
I don't think it's that he's
so strong in the early.
Sure. I don't think it's that he's giving up the early game. It's just that it's not a negative. Where there are some supports where the early game is for sure a detriment to you, where you sort of have to pay passively. He said that Ymir doesn't have that negative, but also has this huge upside with the wall in the late game.
Yeah, he said that, and then he goes 0-6 with 480 DPM. So
I think he just left out the caveat, because I agree with everything he said. It's just Ymir's a last pick or a niche pick kind of thing. This fearlessness that Ymir players have, I don't know where they get it. You want to have a successful Ymir, you have to play like an absolute coward.
Agreed.
Around your team, always huddling together. I'm talking 4 roaming around waiting for them to walk through a certain alleyway. Then you wall that off and you go. And you also have to keep in mind that, yes, maybe you did wall them off, but now you're going to die. I've seen a lot of their Ymirs do that, where it's like, hey, I got him here. And then they burned him down before anyone could show up.
Yeah, and as I talked about a little bit earlier as well, I'm talking about supports. You usually want a support that can peel through your carries, right? Ymir's peel potential is very limited, right? Because you usually use your wall to for the enemy team, to catch them off, and all he really has is his freeze, which is kind of easy. You can juke it with abilities for the most part, and if not, usually a beat. So it's not a good peeler. He doesn't really dive either. All he really has got going for him is his wall, and yeah, maybe if you can wall the whole enemy team off, then sure. But if not, I don't know, man. I don't like the pick at all.
Sure.
I really like the space control that Ymir offers, though, especially in fights that do come down to a range. Say there is a Persephone on the enemy team, you might not be able to wall off the god herself, but now Grasp of Death is going to have to choose its spots a lot better.
Sure.
If anyone does use their jump in an engagement ever, then all of a sudden you've got a very easy target to lock down, especially with in Season 7, the map in particular. The jungle lanes are so much more narrow nowadays. That's almost a direct buff to Ymir.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that his peel got a major buff with the Ymir change being able to get rid of the wall. So now you can throw up the wall, find a freeze. If they beads it, okay. If it feels like they're about to turn on you, evaporate your wall instantly. You get, I would say, about at least 20% CDR in a standard Guardian build, so you should be able to get that back up very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And being as tanky as you are, with Stone of Guying being as meta as it is right now, you should at least be able to get 2 or 3 walls off in a late game team fight if you're playing it properly. So I think that Ymir can certainly be very good, but it is very matchup dependent, and people do often forget how exploitable his early game is when you're playing a mobile Guardian and Ymir being so easy to avoid that freeze. If you ever walk into the jungle and you make eye contact with the enemy jungler, you're probably just dead if you don't have your entire team around you, which is why we see this huge disparity where either Ymir will pop off incredibly or we'll have games like we had last week. But I think it's certainly a pick that can work out on the top end. Whereas on the other hand, Awesome Jake 408 on the Renegades has some meta picks that I don't necessarily agree with either. And he also has some of the same glaring weaknesses as Inbound. I haven't seen Awesome Jake perform well in a Yemoja ever. And that's a huge weakness right now. I often say that Yemoja is the best god in the game, full stop, no debate. So not having that in your team comp against teams that absolutely can play it, which is all of the top 4 teams right now, I think that makes you hugely exploitable in the draft. And while we're talking about Guardians that I don't think should be picked almost ever, Fafnir is trash, okay?
What are you saying, dude?
This god is bad, okay? You jump in, you turn into a dragon, all of a sudden you're dead.
They're bad, bro.
Someone can't hit their hammers.
He is not bad, man. He's not bad, man. That's not true. That's not true. I don't think he's a top pick, but he's definitely good, I think.
He's very good at like getting into spaces where he shouldn't be. I think though, it's something Ymir, I think he needs one more buff, not needing line of sight to place that wall. Turning it, sure, that'd be fun, but just not needing the line of sight.
I need to talk about this Fafnir because I personally think Fafnir is like, he's not the best at peeling. He's not the best at diving, but like he's kind of good at everything. It's like mediocre, and like he's very hard to kill. That's what's really good about Fafnir, in my opinion. And if Fafnir is ever ahead, or if he's playing in a team that has like map pressure at the point, like he can be so annoying because he can follow the enemy jungler around, and like if the enemy team ever tries to collapse on him, it's so hard to kill him, right? Yeah. Like where if there's a mirror trying to follow an enemy jungler around the jungle, he'll just get CC'd and die, right? But like Fafnir has so much mobility. I think Fafnir is still good. Obviously, he brings so much for like bursting objectives, like having good objective damage, and objective burst is super important as well in team comp. So I think Fafnir is definitely not bad. I think there's better support, but what you said about Fafnir kind of hurt my feelings.
Look, to go further into my point on Fafnir, I have a similar view on him as I do Cthulhu, in that Fafnir and Cthulhu are both gods that I consider
no. That's
harder
that's
gods.
Not the same, man.
When you're already winning, Fafnir looks amazing. His dive becomes immaculate. You can no longer deal with Fafnir dive if a team's already ahead. The same with Cthulhu. But from even or behind, I'd almost want just about any other Guardian because they offer you so many more comeback mechanics in team fights. Kepri Geb can initiate a fight incredibly well.
Yeah, they can't initiate. No, I don't think Kepri can initiate a fight as well as Fafnir can initiate from range with like one stun into like a mage. Say you have a raw or like any range, like you can burst, like you can poke a tank or anything. Just with one hammer, you can poke. Like I think Fafnir has. I don't know, man. I don't wanna because Cthulhu has no CC. You can't compare Cthulhu support.
Cthulhu outside ult is trash. I think we both agree on that.
Yeah, sure. I think Cthulhu support is. You should never play that. But like Cthulhu has no CC. Fafnir does have CC, and like if you can hit your dragon jump into stun, you'll literally stun someone for like 10 seconds. So like he's good, but obviously he is like you need mechanics, which I guess a lot of support players might lack. But like if you can hit your abilities on Fafnir,
I swear it's bugged. It's not me. It's the hammer.
Yeah, Fafnir's got to be bugged, right? There's no way hammers are getting this so consistently. Yeah.
I mean, in season 3, there was a bug where you could, like, the dragon jump, it wouldn't do anything.
I do remember that.
I remember that too.
No, it was a normal jump, no? When it was in dwarf form and jump people, it wouldn't do damage. I know that was last season. We had I remember Emilse was complaining about that. Like if you jumped in spot pretty much, it wouldn't do damage or something like that.
Emilse complaining? No way. No way.
But I think that's really what it came down to, seeing as Jake did get the Fafnir banned from him. To me, he is the most annoying Fafnir to deal with. I think he's
like the only one.
Embodies this dragon. And it also pulls back on your initial point that Obey doesn't really diversify how they win. Because if you look at it, game 1, game 2 bans Ra, Arachne, Kuzan.
Yep.
Those are their 3 right there. That's Wolfies, there's Sino, there's Inbound.
That's all they need too.
From there. Yeah.
And notice that none of those are meta picks either, which means that it leaves Renegades to take whatever they want, which is how they ended up getting Yamoja and Persephone in game 1. In game 2, they get an insane draft as well. It's because Obey doesn't have the pieces to force teams to respect their draft. If you're able to ban Arachne in your first phase, I feel like you've already won the metagame. You've already won P's and B's if you're able to afford 3 target bans like that.
Sure.
It depends, because like obviously Renegades beat Obey, right? So like they probably just banning their comfort picks, you know. Like they could probably left those picks open and won anyway. Renegades,
Agreed.
I think.
Agreed.
The next set of the week, which was Space Station Gaming versus Sanguine, and again, you know, I said there was a theme this week of a lot of quick 2-0 sets. Another pretty quick 2-0 set. I think game 1 was 21 minutes or 23 minutes, something like that. Very quick. Game 2, also quick. I think another 21 minutes game here. Dardes gets Hera in both these games. I think we've said multiple times, you just can't give Dardes Hera in these games, and you're going to lose him if he gets it. What are your initial thoughts on Space Station versus Sanguine?
I don't think that's true. Like, Dardes has a kind of weird god pool, in my opinion. Like, right now, like, he liked the Afro, which I feel like Afro is good if she gets through the early game, but I think there's a lot of things to counter it. But I think people are like, usually when it comes to sustain gods, people just hate playing against it. Like, it's same as Morrigan, she has stealth. That like people just hate playing against sustain and stealth and like anything that's annoying. So they ready just ban it away. But like, I think Afro mid has so many weaknesses that you could abuse. But like, I guess people just can't be asked to figure it out maybe. And I think Hera as well. Hera is really good. I think she is a top mid right now. So like, I respect the Hera pick, even though Dardes likes to build 50% CDR on Hera for some reason every game. I don't know what's up with that. But like, Hera is a really good pick though. But she also, like, obviously she's very susceptible to dives, like she has no mobility. She has a good shield for survivability. But then again, you have Raffer usually playing appealing support, like he peels for his backline, which a lot of other SPL teams doesn't like. If Raffer would play Kuzenbo or something, like this Hera would struggle a lot, because she has no one helping her out.
Yeah, I think that the reason that Aphrodite works so well for Space Station is something we hit on earlier today, in that they play the most exclusively European style as well. When everyone else is kind of adapted to this standard SPL meta, this more North American grind fest where the second level 12 minutes rolls around, they group up on Gold Fury and take a fight there. 18 minutes rolls around, they group up on Fire Giant, take a fight there. Space Station is a team that is very willing to play slowly if that's something that their draft allows. And it feels like these teams that are so used to having to match aggression against their enemy don't really know what to do when the enemy team is super willing to just farm it out. And that's why we see them get a lot of value out of this Aphrodite. They're willing to play incredibly safe around it, as well as it's just that frustration point of, okay, she's got beads, she's got Aegis, she's got beads and Aegis and Undying Love, plus the healing, and she's healing someone else. And with Cherio diving me on Erlang Shen, now all of a sudden he's got a moving beads Aegis and it can attack me at the same time. So I think it's really that no one wants to figure out how to play against it, as you pointed out, Zyrhoes, which is, good and bad, right? You can ban it out. But I think that Space Station in particular as a team, Dardes, the player in particular as well, has so many gods that he's been able to perform on such a high level on that he acts as this lightning rod for his team where, okay, we got to address the Hera. We got to get rid of this Aphrodite. Oh, God, what's left? Oh, Cherio's gotten like 18 pentas this year. Maybe we ban the Erlang Shen or the Kali. So I think that Space Station is a team that has garnered so much respect and maybe even a bit of fear from the other teams, where it feels like we can't let them get these incredibly strong picks, but now we're letting all these meta picks through. Nika got an 11-game streak where he's allowed to play Amaterasu just for 10 weeks in a row. I think he's only lost ever one game on it. There are things that Space Station have that need to be addressed and can't be, because Dardes in particular just has so much fear around him.
Yeah, but I think that's weird though, like, because obviously, sure, you don't want to play against those picks, like you don't want to play against the Afro and the Hera. They are really annoying if they're ahead. But then again, I think it's for Raffer, why not ban out Raffer instead? Take away these good peeling characters as he plays. Like, he plays a lot of Sobek and Capri for now. Like, if you ban those, the Hera and the Afro will be a lot easier to kill, right? Like, compared to if you have an Afro Capri, it's super hard to kill. Like, I think if maybe I shouldn't say that, because maybe we will play them at Worlds or whatever. But like, I mean, maybe instead of worrying about Dardes God Pool, like maybe you could take something else away, like something that makes it work. And then again, Shario, I think, is the perfect jungler for Dardes and his God Pool right now, because like with Afro, if you play Afro mid, you want that jungler and you want pressure, because like Afro really lacks in the early game, and you need to be able, if you can defend your own buffs and just go even in the early game with Afro, you're kind of winning already, right? So you have to be worried about that. Like, but I think Shario, like, he knows exactly, like, he will play the Erlang, like something super strong early jungle, to like make this Afro get through the early game, and that's what they do really well, I think. Space Station.
Sure. Frost,
the Erlang, the Robin.
Any thoughts, Frost, on this set?
I think I said 2-0 for this one. SSG just being Sanguine Prime. To me, it just feels like big brother, little brother. SSG is everything Sanguine wants to be. To me, it doesn't ever look like Sanguine has a plan beyond like 2 minutes ahead of where they are currently. Whereas SSG has its whole like, all right, this is our plan for the early, this is our mid, this is the late. I'm sure they're even wondering what happens beyond 60 minutes. I think Sanguine is just like a take what we can get, and anything within the forethought of 2 minutes is how we're going to approach it. And it just shows here. It looks like SSG has a crystal ball every time they play in a Sanguine.
And Sanguine, just to speak to your point there, after they lost game 1, I'm sure that wasn't within their plan, because game 2, they went to the weirdest draft I've ever seen. Amuz and Cobb ADC, Serket Jungle, Kuzumbo Thoth together with King Arthur out of solo. And I'm just sitting there like, there's so many good things available. We could see Netroid go to his signature Jingwei, or he's been succeeding on Ho Yi recently. And instead, he picks one of the most immobile hunters in the game, which allows SSG to just play whatever they want. Guan Yu being meta right now means that AMC, I should almost never see him. Cavalry Charge dominates that god. You can still say late game, sure, he can maybe kill Guan Yu on the way in because Hunter builds are OP, to speak to Zyrhoes' point. But it's just, I don't know. It felt like Sanguine really did just crumble in game 2.
I think Sanguine is a kind of weird spot right now. I don't think really they know how they want to draft or play. But like for me, it's kind of weird because like I think Shinto and Netroid, I think individually, I think those two players are the best in the SPL right now.
Wow.
Maybe for Netroid, like I think PBM, not PBM, I think Panda Cat is like close, but I think Netroid and Shinto, I think are so good at the game, man, like individually. And I don't think Sanguine plays enough around them to like empower them rather than like, I don't really know what they're doing right now, but like, I think they could be a lot better if they just played around Shinto and Netroid and more. Because like, them two players are just so good. Like all of the players on Sanguine, obviously really good, you know, but like, I feel like they just draft kind of weird. Like you see the second game, you have Rong Yu on. I was about to curse that. Sorry. They have Kuzumbo support and King Arthur solo, right? There's no peel, and they have an AMC and Toth, which has no like really self peel.
Sure.
Do you understand what I mean? It's just a bad comp from the start, from the get go. Like I just don't understand what's going on there.
This week, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Adapting, the jungler for Radiance. Please check it out. Hey guys, I'm here with Adapting, the jungler for Radiance, also known, I guess, King Kenneth is your nickname too. Here to talk about Phase 2, Phase 1, and some of his past seasons on his long Smite Pro League career. So starting out with Phase 2, I know recently you guys are coming off of a bit of an extra long break with the bye week due to the COVID situation in your guys' team house. How has sort of these postponed games maybe affected your planning and things like that? Did it have any effect on you guys?
Well, the postponed games themselves, I don't feel like are like super much trouble. It just makes it harder to prepare for every team, right?
Sure.
So usually you play up to two teams per week, but then with like the postponed games, you have to prepare for like maybe 3. And generally, the way we prepare is we prepare for the first team we're playing, and then once we've played them, we prepare for the next team that's coming up.
Okay.
So we're not like actively preparing for like 3 teams at once. Like we're just trying to prepare for whoever's coming up. So I mean that just makes it like you maybe lose a bit of focus on like your later games throughout the week.
Yeah.
But I don't really feel like that's been like any reason for our struggles though.
Sure.
Yeah.
Although, you know, it must have been a little bit difficult coming off of sort of the long break to go through that run of losses. Are you guys sort of getting better from that? Has the mentality sort of improved from that state?
Yeah, I think it's definitely improving right now as well, and like it's getting better, and like I think it's very big that we got that win against United, especially like at 2-0. Momentum's a big thing in, I would say, any sport and esport, and like it's just like, even though you don't really think about it, it's like you maybe not feel it mentally, like something just happens when like you start losing a lot. You kind of like just slump. The same kind of thing happens when you start winning a lot. Like you just in like a winning mindset more, and it just makes it easier to win, even though like it doesn't maybe something you feel consciously.
Sure. Do you think having sort of this extra long time off? I know you also sort of combined the bye week into your as part of helping Benji get over COVID and things like that. Did that the extra long time, the break? Do you think that was a problem? I mean, I imagine you guys were still playing, but not being able to scrim and things like that. Do you get rusty and things like that after even like a 2-week break? Do you feel like?
Definitely. Like as a team, the thing is that like maybe individually, like even individually, you do lose like a bit of like sharpness, I would say, and like, but as a team, the way you like think about the game and the way you like that we were finally like clicking better and better, and like getting more on the same page on like how we wanted to play and what to do. And then we had like a very long break. We basically didn't scrim for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, all other teams are practicing playing their games like normal, and they're just improving from what they already have. And we kind of felt like we kind of got back to square one. And so we've kind of been like rebuilding in our games. Like we basically just had to take our SPL games as like practice rather than like super important to win, like just trying to get as much practice from it as possible and like try and get good for when it actually matters.
Yeah, and like you said, I imagine because you had 3 games to like make up for them, it probably felt harder to do as well in all 3 of them, because there are 3 of them to play that week.
Yeah.
You did mention that the team sort of, in your words, you went back to square one. And when I was talking with my analysts over the past couple weeks, we've sort of noticed that you guys are maybe tending towards some more comfort picks, at least early on, as soon as you were coming out of the bye-week break. I see like Aurora playing Terra, and I think you picked up Merc in a couple sets or a couple games right after the bye week and things like that. Was that something that you guys tried to do? Like say, hey, we've kind of lost some of our synergy. Maybe just like pick picks that we're all comfortable with, Was that a conscious thing, or maybe are we looking too much into it?
Well, I think, we just kind of picked we thought like, okay, like we might do well with these picks because we haven't been practicing like comps together. So let's just play what we like kind of thing, I guess. It wasn't something we actively like said in like preparation for games, like, oh, let's just do comfort picks. It's just kind of like what ended up happening in our draft. We're just kind of going to put in a position like, okay, what do we play here? And then, just defaulted to those picks, I suppose.
Sure. Do you think that was detrimental, or do you think that helped sort of stabilize the environment for your team?
I'm not really sure, because it didn't work out, so it's kind of hard to say whether it would have been better if we drafted differently or picked differently, but I don't think that was the fundamental issue either way. I just think it was the way we were kind of playing together, playing around the map, and using our groupings or not grouping rather properly, etc. It's just our team play that was just very off.
Sure.
What to say?
Yeah. So I know you mentioned that you guys are sort of getting back into the swing of things, especially with the 2-0 over E United recently. Can you talk maybe a little bit about what you do? Is it just a little more scrimming, or are there like meetings and things that happen outside of scrims where you're like, hey, we want to do these things, we want to do those things? How does a team like yours sort of deal with all these losses and then sort of move on from that?
Well, we definitely had a lot of discussions, and then we talked about what to do, but I feel like we didn't really implement what we said that we wanted to. So we would have a discussion on say a Sunday, and then be like, okay, tomorrow let's practice these picks, and let's try and play the game this way, and then maybe we'd go into the next day and we just wouldn't really do what we said, and so we were effectively kind of just wasting our practice time, not doing what we talked about doing and how we think we should play the game. But I feel like more recently we're starting to actually do what we're talking about. Having had some discussions recently on what picks and kind of how we want to utilize those picks, and hopefully moving forward we should be able to secure some more wins.
Yeah. I like that you bring up moving forward, because I'm going to ask you a little bit maybe to look forward into Worlds and things like that. this is kind of the first time I think in your career that you're not really at the top of the table, and there are still some games to be played, for sure. But are you still feeling confident about doing well in the playoffs and getting to the big dance as it is?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I feel like usually around this time, like every team I've been on usually like starts to kind of come together more and starts playing kind of near their best. So,
Sure.
And I feel like right now we're improving again, and if we can keep this up, then I think we'll be in a really good spot heading forwards.
You talked a little bit earlier about sort of adapting to that NA style. Do you feel like more teams have started pushing that just because there's more sort of exposure to that NA style now? Whereas in like EU, there was maybe like a bit of a bubble of like, for like where that EU style could have grown up independently. Like especially after season 6 when everyone merged in together.
Yeah, no, there was definitely a merge in like the playstyle because, well, it basically just became the NA playstyle because the majority of the players were NA, right?
Yeah.
And so the teams that still kind of had an EU playstyle was us, them back then in season 6, PK and Renegades were like, we weren't really playing to like brawl all the time and fight all the time, but like we were still, playing the map well enough that like even if they were looking to fight, like you would get your form and then you would just kind of take fights when you thought you were stronger, and that was kind of like working out, I guess.
Sure.
But now I think most teams have definitely started getting more and more on the like NA playstyle with like aggression and fighting. But like Sanguine also, I feel like they're a team that has like a fairly passive playstyle, and they make it work. But yeah, I think it's just what teams are kind of used to, and like what the majority of your team will play is kind of the playstyle you start adopting.
Sure. And I guess because the regions aren't separate, it's like hard to see if there are distinct differences between the ways teams play, right? If you're all in the same league.
Yeah.
Right, because
definitely.
It doesn't really feel like Space Station are like, like, of course they're always going to play for like the mid-late game because that's sort of the players that they have. But I still feel like they're aggressive when they can be in the early game. Like they don't shy away from that anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, but I just feel like they don't like they'll be like looking for farm a lot, etc. But they're not really like. I don't feel like they'll get like as many kills as like Ghost will,
Sure.
Like Ghost are teams that like just actively like just looking to kill people, and like but SSG does it in their own way. They do it really well.
Yeah. All right, Adapting. I think I'm all out of questions here. So we've come to the time in the interview where I'm asking who you trying to call out, who you got beef with, and finally, you have any shout outs, and also if there's anything you feel that's like wrong with the game, or something that you need to bring to light, the floor is yours. It's time for your soapbox.
Right. So for shout out or like call outs, I actually don't really have any call outs, to be honest. That's kind of boring to say. But like the Smite Pro League is kind of like boring like that. I feel like there's not too many. There's not too much.
Now's the time. All right. Who's pissing you off in scrims?
Nah. But I mean, like most people is friendly with each other within the league. Like it's a pretty friendly league. And for the game, I don't know. Like just keep the lanes away from the jungle more. Like I something I do wonder. Like I'm not sure. Maybe it would be more boring, but I feel like it would be fun if laning phase had more emphasis on it. Because I feel like laning right now doesn't really exist too much. Like you have it a bit in duo and solo, but like mid lane, for example, like they have no laning phase at all.
Yeah, it lasts like
they
one wave.
Clear one wave.
Yep.
They clear one wave before at least another person is in mid for the entirety of the game, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of lame.
Sure.
And I wish, I think you can change it up by making like the lane creeps tankier, the jungle creeps also tankier, and like maybe also further separated from the lanes. And just make it so that like sharing maybe isn't necessarily efficient, because right now you still gain XP out of sharing. Out of thin air. You're creating XP. Essentially. So I wonder how the game would be like if. Also, like I think pushing like early towers is a bit undervalued, because it's almost like detrimental to your team if you push your tower. Is that what I'm looking for?
Yeah.
Where like if you push a tower too early, unless it's the mid tower, people can just zone you so far back, and then you just become like a vulnerable target.
Sure.
Because you have to step up.
Yeah.
And you don't get enough gold to really like reward you for getting that tower. But that's what I would say like about the game.
Sure.
For now.
What about shoutouts? I know we skipped over the callouts and stuff, but what about shoutouts? Who you got to shout out?
I mean, I'm just gonna shout out to everyone watching this podcast. A shout out to you. I mean, podcast like interview. Shout out to all Smite fans, everyone watching, from home, my family. My parents watch a lot and cheer. My fiance, of course.
Sure.
And yeah, just that's it, I guess.
All right, man. Thanks a lot for joining me on this interview. I really appreciate it. I think we had a great talk. We touched on a lot of issues, and good luck for your team and everyone on the squad in the rest of the season. I hope to see you guys at Worlds.
Thank you very much.
All right, the last set of Week 11 was Ghost versus Renegades, and the score says 2-0, but I think it was a little bit closer in Game 2 than Ghost really wanted. And Renegades really started off the early game in Game 2 looking really good. What are your guys' initial thoughts on this? I think Renegades really showed up for this game, but maybe threw a little bit in the late game there.
This one was funky. It felt like Game 1 they go, let's play super early. But it was also like a very reserved, we always hold down the gas pedal, but now we're going to implement a break here and there. And so they found a not as fast way to go downhill, but also kind of control the pacing there. And then the second game, the troll game, that's where they went, all right, let's try to go for a late game. Almost as if they had a bet, like, all right, no one's allowed to get first blood till 15 minutes.
For me, it's like the first game, obviously, like a variety fed his brains out. But I mean, it is hard. He's playing against a Willix jungle, which is obviously really good against Serb. But Serb is one of them picks, kind of like me, like Emir, that like Serb is really popular in SPL from support and solo. People like to play it. For me, I just think it's a shit god, like he does damage. He's like a warrior. He doesn't peel for his backline. I guess for solo lane, it kind of makes sense because you can die with Serb. But I think it's just worse at that than like an Amaterasu or like any other solo lane, like King Arthur or like any other solo lane will probably dive better than Serb. So I don't see why that's a good pick. And obviously he got counterpicked by a Willix in the first game as well. And then I feel like there's something with Ghost, and whenever Final K is playing Nike as well, because like there's just Sanford Soccer and the Final K. When Final K is on Nike, they just make it work every time, and they have pressure. And like Final K gets super big on Nike, and like when Nike solo gets fed, it's so hard to deal with. I think because like if she comes into team fights and she's bigger than the enemy ADC and the enemy mage, it's just very hard to kill her, right? And she does damage too. And like as for an ADC, for example, like she can put up her 2, like blocks all auto attacks for like, I don't know, like 8 seconds or whatever, however long that ability lasts. Like if Nike gets big in solo lane, it's very hard to deal with. Like you're like, oh sure, we can build Sunder to remove her also, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. Like whenever Ghost gets, I think Nike for Ghost right now seems to be like whenever they get Nike, the games are not even like close, kind of. So
sure, I think Final K is really the only one who's been playing the Nike solo to any success. I don't think we've really seen it from any other solo laners in the SPL, at least this phase.
Yeah, not this phase. I think last phase, I think Benji played it a bit.
Sure,
and then maybe some other solo laners as well. But I think
that was the win condition for MSI.
Yeah, but I think after that, that's when Sunder started removing shields, right? And that's when like people stopped playing it, but he started playing it again. So
I think that I don't have a major issue with Renegades' draft as a whole. It's the draft order. They first picked Cerberus immediately out of the rip, which opens them up to the Willix Rom. what are you doing? Cerberus is good. He can work out. I mean, you got the CC, you've got a slow.
He's not even good. He's like mediocre at best, in my opinion. But yeah, sure.
First pick overall, immediately I saw the Willix pick come through, and I'm like, oh, well, good luck wherever this goes. And I felt like Renegades really wanted that Cerberus to go into the support role. And then they pick up the Amaterasu later on, and then they're thinking about it. I'm even thinking by the time they pick up the Amaterasu, they're like, all right, that's going to go in a soul lane. And then someone's eyes glaze over as they look over at Ghost Straff and like, oh, there's a Willix over there. It's going to get bodied. Let's make sure that they're not camping our duo lane because we really want our ADC to do well. We need Barracuda performing well. So we're going to try and drag Stanford Soccer away. And I think that's a misplay in of itself. If you know a lane is going to lose no matter what, you might as well have a lane you have your support be losing. Have him fall behind. He's less impactful than your soul laner. Had Amaterasu gone into solo, he would have had a much better matchup over there. He would have been able to rotate into team fights and be impactful. I think that might have been a misplay in of itself.
All right, let's move on to maybe some of the not so bright spot of this week. There were 2 postponed sets because there were some personal issues with one of the members on the PK. And I know we probably don't know any of the details about that. And I'm not
but
expecting,
I'm not going to say anything.
I'm not going to expecting.
Edit it out so the rest of us know.
But, we have seen postponed sets really take a toll on other teams in this league, specifically Radiance, who went on a 6-set slide after, coming back from, I guess there was the bye week there too, but they had sort of 2 weeks of postponed sets. Do you guys think something similar could happen to PK in this set? And I don't know if you can say anything, Myflin, but do you know if they're going to be playing this week?
They will be playing this week. I can't say anything else on the topic, but I worry for PK because I don't want that to happen to them, because especially how well they've been performing recently, just climbing, rocketing throughout the standings right now. This is a team that I feel like really established their identity in the last couple of weeks. They figured out what works for them. They're really gearing up towards Worlds. They want to defend that title. And if this is something that could really put us like a damper on this upward angle that they're on right now, I think that is a huge concern if you're a PK fan. But I trust this team. They're filled with veterans. I know that we like to talk about Baskin intangibles. I think Zapman's another player that certainly has that. He's been in the league for so long. I think that if any team could bounce back from this quickly, it is PK. And I think that they're a team, and this is me completely blowing smoke out of my ass, I think that they're a team that don't concern themselves too much with losing. It feels like they're not overly worried when they're not performing well.
Yeah.
Recently in an interview, Hindu Man was talking to Paul, and he's like, so how's it feel to never ever beat a top 4 team? You haven't done it a single time in phase 2. And Paul said, what? I thought we did. So
yeah,
it seems like they get brushed off.
There's nonchalantness, and maybe he's just forgetful.
Functionally the same, right?
The SK whole last season, like they were like literally a bottom team the whole last season, and they won World. So I don't think they care if they play a little bit worse for a little while now, but I don't think they will. Like whoever's sick on PK, like we don't even know how long they've been sick. Like it's probably something pretty serious, but like maybe they've been playing a little bit in a while. I don't know how serious it is, but I think they're gonna when they stop playing again, I think they're gonna look just like they did when they left it.
That's good. That's good. What about you, Frost? You think what effect do you think this postponement could have on PK?
Let's see here. This postponement, I don't think it'll do much of anything. I honestly give them the benefit of the doubt in that Zap said that it's all a mentality thing. Why don't we do too well right now? Well, we're not playing at LAN. We don't see our opponents. We don't have that energy, I think right now, this is when they're all going to have their energy just gearing up for Worlds. Why is this any different? Like, why is phase 1, phase 2, and now any different from the rest of it? Because it's just that energy, that drive to actually go there. It's just right around the corner instead of like, all right, coming into the office, 9 to 5, yeah, whatever.
Sure.
It's just more tangible now, and I think that's where these boys thrive.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to ask about, these postponed matches is they will have to be made up at some point, and that will involve PK having to play an extra match in that week. Do you think having to play an extra match could, change up the effects of the other matches that will have to be played during that week? Like, especially for PK, like there are going to be some weekends when they'll have to play 3 games or 3 sets for sure. And coaches are the first to tell you that preparation, that matters the most. And so having an extra match to prepare for means that you're not going to be able to spend time for, the other ones. Is that something that could
They don't
cause some effect.
They don't strike me like the kind of team that does homework for the others. I think their homework is for their own play style, and they'd almost welcome the gauntlet.
Sure.
I think if PK could do all their games in 2 weeks, they'd rather that than actually have it like every 2 weeks or something like that.
Sure.
No, I think having a lot of games in a week it can be annoying because like you have to prepare for every team, right? And like it depends. Like sometimes you just feel like, okay, this team we don't have to prepare that much because like some teams are like more one-dimensional. They do the same thing. Like Sanguine, for example, like they do the same thing. I don't think you have to prepare if you were in SPL that much against. They're a really good team, but you probably wouldn't have to prepare that much against them. But then you have teams like Ghost. Who else? Maybe Ghost and Sanguine, maybe.
Or
Not
SSG.
Sanguine. I just said them.
SSG, yeah.
SSG, maybe, yeah. And like there's teams you have to prepare, but like a lot of games are like you don't have to prepare that much. It's more like thinking about your own game. So like I don't think it's gonna be a problem for them at all.
So PK's makeup matches are on Saturday this week. They've only got one makeup this week, and it's going to be up against Radiance. And they've also got Ghost Gaming on Saturday as well. But I think that whether or not you have to prepare for a team or having to play more matches is going to be detrimental or good for you is very situational. I'm going to do something that the community hates and talk about when I used to be a player back in the way back when.
No, that's why you're here, man. We want your experience.
So when I would be on LAN, I would absolutely love, if I had to play a garbage team into a much better team. Because you get to come in with hot hands, right? You've warmed up a little bit. You know what you're going to do. There's something to be said about fatigue, and obviously there's going to be diminishing returns. If I have to play 4 sets back-to-back, my third set might be my best set, and the fourth set might be the worst. But I think that PK is a team that is very, very good in like high-pressure situations. These guys, I think it might come with their nonchalanceness. Is that a word? I'm not sure. Nonchalance? They should be able to do very well here. And I think they've certainly high-rolled as well. It's going to be PK up against Radiance first. Radiance is certainly backsliding right now. It feels like they don't really know what to do in the mid to late game with shot calling. Their drafts are in a state of flux as well. And then they get to come into that Ghost set with hot hands. I think that they might be able to find an upset this week, just if they are coming in playing well, assuming that whatever illness begets them right now isn't too dire.
Sure.
So I think that all in all, we shouldn't be too worried about PK. I think they've definitely got a very good shot this week. And because we're a good company, high res that is, we're not forcing them to do all their makeup games in the same day. We're not forcing them to do it all in the same week either as well. So I'm feeling good for them.
It's time to make our picks for the Week 12 SPL games. I think we'll start with Myflin on this one. The first game of the week is Radiance versus Sanguine. Myflin, who are you choosing in this one? Radiance versus Sanguine.
That's such an interesting set because both of these teams are in such a weird spot right now. Both Radiance and Sanguine have been struggling recently. But I think it comes down to how much variance do each one of these squads have. I think that Sanguine's skill floor is higher than Radiance's, but their skill ceiling is simultaneously lower. So it really does come down to how is Radiance going to perform. And I think recently we've seen that they've been bouncing back ever so slightly. So long story short, we'll say 2-1 Radiance.
All right, Frost, how about you? Radiance versus Sanguine.
Same exact thing, honestly. With the volatility and the variance, to me, it goes Radiance on their worst day, then Sanguine on their worst day, Sanguine on their best day, then Radiance on their best day. So it's really going to come down to if Radiance is getting their stuff back together, they got that ceiling to fall back into, and they're going to take it. If not, if they're looking sloppy, Sanguine has that composition, that team style that just directly counters a very sloppy team. And so I think Radiance are getting back together. I think they're starting to form it all. By now, they should have figured it out. I'm thinking 2-0.
Ooh.
2-0 for Radiance from Frost. All right, Zeros, how about you? Radiance versus Sanguine.
I have the same, like, it's so hard to tell because I think if both teams play their A game, I think Sanguine will probably win. I'm not sure, but like I'll probably give it to Sanguine. But I think Sanguine has been looked kind of lost in the sauce lately. So I don't know. And I think Radiance have been struggling. And I think Radiance has players like Aurora and Adapting that I know for a fact that like they care a lot and like they probably want to like, what are we doing wrong? Like we have to be better. And obviously they have a lot of like really good players in that team as well. And if they have figured stuff out by now, I'd definitely give it to Radiance. And honestly, I do think they have. So like, I would give it Radiance like 2-1 or 2-0. I'm not sure. But then as well, like Sanguine, I have no idea because like they're new in the SPL. They've been playing in SML recent year. Like they don't have that much experience. Like I don't know how fast they are at like seeing like, oh, what are we doing wrong? You know, like they might just think like, oh, we're doing the right things, but we're just playing bad or whatever. You know, when there's something bigger than that. So like, I definitely think Radiance take this one. I could be very wrong on this, I think, but like I think 2-1 is a safe bet.
Sure.
But if Radiance has really stepped up, 2-0, but I go with 2-1 Radiance.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of in the same boat. It was a little bit disappointing. I think Sanguine has had a couple of losses in the past couple weeks where Radiance has sort of been finding their form a little bit more again. So I agree with basically all of what you guys said. I think it's going to be Radiance 2-1. All right, Frost, let's start with you on the next one, which is Space Station Gaming versus Obey. Who do you think is going to win it?
Oh boy, this is oh boy, it's gonna be Bobby against Raffer. I just think it's gonna be very similar to PBM versus Gino, a more like tenured support. I almost said complete there. I'd say Raffer's just way more tenured, way more synchronized with his own team. It's gonna come down to them. It's gonna be 2-0, but it's gonna be two very long matches.
Okay. Zyrhoes, how about you? Space Station Gaming versus Obey.
2-0 Obey. No, just kidding. Space Station 2-0 easy, I think.
Okay.
They're a smart team. They probably know all the strengths of Obey. I don't know. They've probably been screaming each other as well. So like I reckon Space Station probably knows exactly like what Obey does when they do well. So like I think this is an easy 2-0 for Space Station.
Sounds good. Looks like Space Station sweep if Myflin's gonna go for it, but I know you're the Obey stand here, Myf. So who you got? Space Station versus Obey.
Look, I vote Obey on sets that Obey aren't even playing in, but I'm gonna go into it just ever so slightly because I think that Other Frost hits a pretty good point there of the inbound versus Raffer train. Of all of SSG's roster, I think that Raffer is the one that fluctuates the most on any given day. He might be a beast. Last weekend, he was a beast on this Sobek. He was hitting every
because he's playing good gods.
Yeah, and he's playing good gods. Sometimes he's doing some other stuff. But Raffer also can straight up lose you some games. I'll never fault him for it because he won't lose you games very often, as shown by the standings currently. If I were betting money, I'm putting SSG on the board. But I'm betting my soul, which is something that I've already given away multiple times with separate deities and demons. So I'm going to go ahead and put Obey up there and just pray that that energy that I put into the universe is enough to find them a win. 2-1 Obey.
2-1 Obey from Mifflin.
Man, I love put extra money on that.
How's that gonna work? How's Obey gonna like who? I want to know more about that 2-1 actually. Like how is Obey gonna win 2 games against SSG? Who is gonna carry and like what's gonna happen? Like what's your vision for that one?
Lord and Savior Sino on God. Maybe they just don't ban the Arachne. He locks in the Erlang. Arachne sucks, but Sino it's getting bans. That's all I know. I haven't even got to see him play it yet because they ban it so often. So, Lord B Sino of the jungle, please deliver unto me some Obey dubs. Thank you. Amen.
Okay, I will put money on it that Bobby plays Ymir, right? Because his wall is really good against SSG comps. They have those kind of get caught out characters, but they're also the I'm going to turn on you now. I think this is the last game of Ymir that Bobby's going to play.
Ever.
That's a good prediction.
For the rest of this week. Just to make it spicy, I think he's finally going to like get absolutely run over because he's going to get some good walls, and the only option left is to just burn through them to the point where he goes, you know what? Okay, maybe this is just not the pick anymore.
Here's the thing about how Bobby doesn't care about what's happening on the field for his pick. This Ymir doesn't succeed very often. He's still going to it. It could be the best draft ever. It could be Hera, Erlang, Shen, Hachiman, Sobek, just a ton of gods that can't deal with the wall. He could get absolutely blown out, 0-6 in the early game. He's going to go to Ymir in the next game. I know it in my heart of hearts that Bobby is a stubborn fellow.
He's had games where that wall actually you could go, okay, if they didn't get blown out there, that was a really hot wall. That was a really nice wall. Even against Ghost, he had some really nice walls. This is going to be the one where he goes, perfect wall. I got 8 alive. Never again.
Not even me, just my whole team. We all lost. I walled all 5. Maybe. But his fallback gods, I don't like at all. I mean, this man will lock in Fafnir, but we don't need to reopen that one.
Sure. I think my pick this week for this game, It's probably going to be SSG. We did sort of see Obey surging in the past couple weeks, I think, since the bye week especially, but last week didn't look very good or convincing, and I think SSG are maybe trying to prove something a little bit after losing to PK recently, so they're definitely not going to drop anything. So I think this is going to be SSG 2-0. Let's move on to the next set of the week, which is Ghost versus PK. I think I have to start with you on this one, Myflin. No, I don't. Zyrhoes. You're going first on this one.
Oh!
Ghost versus PK. Who you got?
Ghost versus PK. That's an interesting one. I don't really know. The thing is, Ghost has their own playstyle. I don't always love their draft. I think the drafts could be way better at times, but like whatever draft they have, they play it really well. But I think PK, when they draft, they have like a reasoning behind the draft, and they really know what they want to do. I guess Ghost is the same, but I think PK is more about like the mid late game, like how do we win late game. I honestly think PK wins that. That's such a hard one because PK's been off as well, right? Like they haven't been playing for a while, so this is the first game back.
Yep.
Fred has been looking like an absolute monster the last couple of sets as well. I have to give this one to PK. 2-0 or 2-1? That's the question. I think Paul. The biggest thing. I think Paul versus Twig. I think Paul is 10 times the mid laner that Twig is. Every other role is kind of similar, I think. But I just think PK 2-1. I guess it's the safest bet.
Sure.
I can't go for 2-0. I think, but I think PK 2-1. But that could also be very wrong because like I think PBM is the best support in the league, and I think it's such a beast. But like, I still think PK 2-1.
Sure. Myth, how about you? Ghost versus PK.
I gotta agree with the same line of thought that Zyrhoes has there, and it really does come down to Cuvo Fred for me. For a long time, we've considered this guy adapting junior. He's just a worse version of adapting.
The Kingslayer.
Recently, the Kingslayer, the up and coming Bram of the high wall, whatever you want to call him. But I think that the last time we saw Cuvo play a couple weeks back, this guy was an absolute beast, a man possessed. I thought some of the mechanical plays he was doing on the field might have even rivaled at times some of the things we're seeing from Sam for Soccer. So I think it really does come down to how well is he going to do coming out of this break. If he's able to bring that exact same energy that we saw last time, I think PK could win. If this game becomes split at all, if Ghost wins a single game in the set, they're going to win the entire set. But I am a man who loves upsets. I'm going to vote on the veterans here, the reigning world champions. So I have to go 2-0 PK.
Hey, okay. Frost, how about you? Ghost versus PK. I know you're a resident Ghost stan, so...
I think this is going to be the match to watch, honestly. With the same line of thinking from the prior ones, it's just coming down to, is Ghost going to play clean? Is this some sort of a sentimental match for them? Or do they want to force everything that the Knights have already? That's what separates this to me, is if it's going to be a 2-1 or a 2-0. Do Ghosts just want to win flat out? 2-0. Do they want to like push Paul to his limit? Do they want to see what Cuvo can do? Because you stated Twig being or Paul being 10 times the mid laner that Twig is, but I don't think Cuvo can deal with 4 junglers. They've had this weird composition where it really turns into Ghost gaming, like everyone except for Pandacat, because I guess Cupid can't really dive too well. Everyone except for Pandacat becomes a jungler. That's the playstyle against Knights, and I don't even think Cuvo can deal with that, seeing as he was the shining star in the other games where he doesn't even die, now to being completely focused out. I'm going to go for 2-0 Ghost, and I think it's going to be a brawl. I think they're both going to play kind of clean, kind of timid.
I mean, I love PK here, so I'm going to give it to PK 2-0. I hope everything goes well with them, especially coming off these sort of the week off. But sometimes that can be a good thing, maybe a bit of a mental reset as well. So I got PK winning this set. All right, let's move on to Space Station Gaming versus the Renegades. I think, Myflin, we're going to start with you on this one. Who you got in Space Station versus the Renegades?
Well, I'm going to preface this all by saying it's Space Station 2-0, but allow me to expand. Renegades is my least favorite team to watch. And I've been on record saying this before because this is a team, and I mean this wholeheartedly. Let me sit up straight. Renegades is a team that you can see it distinctly in their play on the field when their mental shatters. It comes to nothing. Occasionally, they will stop all proactive play. It seems like all 5 members agree, okay, we're going to lose this set, but let's drag it out as long as we possibly can. I'm going to sit at my back camps. Barracuda's hiding behind his tier 2 when the tier 1's still available, and then they don't go for anything. And it seems like it takes a while for the enemy team to respond to this shift in Renegade's play style. And then they start to group up around objectives. Renegades don't show up. They group up on the Phoenix to defend it. Renegades don't use a single ultimate. It just feels like it's very easy to see that this is a very emotional team. Again, smoke out my ass. I'm not sure what it's like behind the scenes. I've never been inside their comms. I can't speak to the individual players. But it does very much feels like Renegades is a team that can just straight up give up. We like to say that they're the counterpunch team, but it feels like they're more the head weave team. They're back there waiting for the counterpunch, but they never extend their arm. And I think if they could just evolve a little bit past that point, if they could just move a little bit forward, because they're able to make it to the late game, if they could just do something in the late game, they're going to be an absolute threat in the league. And recently, the shining star of Renegades has been Ben. He's been really standing out to me. He's been stepping up for his team. If they want to start playing through him, then I'll start having some confidence in this squad. But for right now, I don't think they even hold a candle to SSG.
Sure. Frost, how about you? SSG versus the Renegades.
I love the analogy of the head weaving. And with that, I think either Jake or Ven are winding up for a punch. There's also something just really inherently odd about Jake's playstyle that is just too hard to computate, hard to really predict, hard to schedule around it. For the lack of a better word, it's just the most American playstyle going into this EU like meta that they're going to go against. I think they could maybe whip one out, but it's also just kind of me wanting to see them take a game. I think it's going to be 2-0 Space Station.
Sure. Zyrhoes, let's wrap it up here with you. Space Station versus the Renegades.
I mean, obviously, Space Station are looking like the best team in the league right now. It's like they should win this, but but I think also the jungle matchup. I think Shario versus Laspra is kind of interesting because I think those two players. Obviously, I think Shario is probably better than Laspra, but I think like at a mechanical level, I think they're pretty similar. Like I don't think either of them are like the top of like being like a top super mechanical clean player, you know. But like, I don't know. And then you also have Renegades. You have Variety who's joining. Like he obviously probably still want to prove himself in that team. It's like he's been playing well, and they've been kind of struggling a bit. And then you also have the Veneno factor, where like he could play anything. He could play the Set. He could play the Chunga. Like what do we get? You know, like is he gonna be a good mid laner or like something troll? So I don't know. I think this is a game that Renegades could actually win. I don't think they will, but they could definitely do it. I think, but I would still give it. I guess I give it 2-1 Space Station. I think Renegades could actually no 2-1 Renegades. 2-1 Renegades.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Unless I don't think
where
that,
do you think
but
the
like I
one
think
comes
maybe
from?
there's a chance. There's a chance, I think, and I think if Renegades do win this set, I think they're gonna. Cause like Variety, I play with Variety a lot of years, and like he's a really smart player. Like he knows how to play the game, and like he's a good theory crafter, you know. So like. And it wasn't long ago since he joined this team, you know. It's like he could probably like maybe this team has to figure something out. I think 2-1 Renegades.
Sure.
For the boys.
For the boys. Man, unfortunately I'm not as confident in the Renegades as you are, Mr. Zyrhoes. I think it's gonna be Space Station here. You know, Frost always says that Sanguine is sort of like the younger brother to Space Station, but I kind of feel like I see that quite a bit with the way the Renegades kind of play. You know, in terms of like Ven being the one who picks up the Heras and the Chongas and some of these weird mid picks. And I feel like Lasbra and Cherry's God pulls kind of overlap quite a bit as well. So, you know, I think it's going to be a long set, but I think it's going to be Space Station who take it 2-1.
Veneno's going to have the perfect day where he only plays good gods. He's going to play the Hera. He's going to play like all the good gods. It's going to be easy piece for Renegades.
Then he's still on Renegades.
But he's still on Renegades.
But then he's still on Renegades. Like you say that they're siblings, if anything, because I do think that sometimes, yes, they do play in that same vein.
Sure.
But this is like distant cousins.
Okay.
You got SSG Sanguine, very closely related, but like SSG is obviously way more tenured. Renegades is just their cousins, way far maybe twice removed. I don't know.
All right, Frost, let's stick with you on this one. Radiance versus Obey. Start us off. Who you got?
There's a lot of enthusiasm on the Obey boys. I think I enjoy that. They come into these so optimistic, but I think this one might be a bit beyond their league. And I think it's going to be Radiance 2-0, especially against the Sanguine game earlier. I don't think there's a chance that they lose both these sets against Sanguine and Obey, so Radiance is going to 2-0, at least this one, if not the other one.
Sure. Zyrhoes, how about you? Radiance versus Obey.
I think Radiance is going to be better now. Like, they've been struggling, but I think they're probably going to be getting better and better right now. And as for Obey, they have the support playing kind of troll picks, in my opinion. And they have Wolfie, which have been looking good on Raw, but nothing else really. Like, he'd been playing Persephone quite a bit, and it hasn't been looking that good. Like, I don't think Wolfie is a threat at all, unless it's on the Raws. Like, obviously, I think the Raw's going to get outbanned. And then we have Wowie that did like 4,000 damage in a 25-minute game on Rom. So, like, I think the carries on Obey are just not good enough to compete. Like, I think this is an easy 2-0 for Radiance.
All right, Myth, bring us home here. Radiance versus Obey. Who you got?
Well, Zyrhoes, I'm glad that you bring up Wolfie playing the Persephone and not looking too good on it, because that's a point that I like to make on the cast very often, especially about Obey, because I don't like seeing him on Emoji, I don't like seeing him on Persephone, because I don't think they're capable of playing those characters at all. But people argue with me, oh, Wolfie hit a couple of grasps of death in the late game. You can't hit a couple of grasps of death. You gotta hit all of them. You gotta hit the bone rush consistently. And I think that it's such a detriment to this team. But look, Radiance is backsliding. I think that's an undeniable fact right now. Obey, I've been pushing the narrative that they've been on the up, but it's more like they were on the up, they plateaued for about 3 weeks, they went on the up one set, then plateaued for another 6 weeks. So I think we're overdue for an up, and an up for Obey is a singular win. And I think against this backsliding Radiance, we could absolutely see it. Inbound in particular has been improving a lot, the most rapidly within the league. I think he would be the most improved player if I were to hand out a ribbon for that, but it might be because he had the most room to grow.
Sure.
That said, Obey, I'm going to go 2-0 here. If Obey loses a single game in the set, I think they lose the entire set. So I have to go 2-0 if I think Obey are going to win.
Oh, okay.
What's wrong with you, man?
He's only had one can.
How did you get hired at high risk? Like,
Yeah, I had the console ring, you know?
Sure.
That's what it is.
Last game of week 12 is Sanguine. Oh, hold on. I did not give my prediction for Radiance versus Obey. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say, especially with teams that are kind of in the middle of the pack now. I think where Radiance squarely is at this point in the season. I think I'm going to give it to Radiance 2-1. Like you said, Myflin, I think if Radiance win one game, they will probably take the set. It's going to be hard for Obey to come back. So I think Radiance will take it 2-1. All right, last set of week 12. Finally, we're here. Sanguine versus United. I think we have to start with you, Zyrhoes. Who you got here? Sanguine versus United.
Sanguine versus United. That's an interesting one, because like United have had a lot of roster changes, obviously, with Gino and Baskin. Sanguine has not been looking that great lately. I think both of the teams lost the last games as well, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Who would I pick for that? That's a hard one, actually. Jarkor versus Baskin. Oh, I don't know, man. Jarkor versus Baskin, I think they're pretty similar. I think, if anything, I think Jarkor might be better than Baskin right now.
Agreed.
Jungle, Panitom versus Scream. That's the same. Like, both of them junglers, I feel like, are super similar. Where like they either have like they really pop off, they find a way, they know their picks, and they play really well, or they play something weird like Bastet or something not good, and like they feed, you know. So it's not that good. Mid laners, you have Hariwu and Shinto. I definitely give it to Shinto.
Yep.
Dual lane, you have Netroid and Jarkor against Gino and Snoopy. I definitely give it to Sanguine. Because of the dual lane mainly. Sure. I think it's going to be dual lane diff, probably. Thing is, with Sanguine dual lane, I think Rongyu and Netroid is such good players, both of them. But I think Rongyu's God pool, especially, kind of holding. I think it's not holding the dual lane down, but I think it's holding the team down when it comes to team fights and that kind of stuff. But I still think they'll beat the United 2-0 or 2-1. I don't know. I guess 2-1 is safer. I don't know. I think it's kind of close. 2-0, 2-0.
All right.
Sanguine.
2-0 for Sanguine from Zyrhoes here. Myth, how about you? Sanguine versus United.
This set is a really important heat check for E United, a team that I think a lot of the fans have huge expectations of, just because Baskin the GOAT, Wooney Kim coming into the league, the god of Smite, I guess some would like to call. But I just have not been impressed by the things that we can evaluate. The empirical data that we have on Baskin has not been necessarily impressive right now. So I think that I would favor out Sanguine in the soul lane. I think the only thing that E United have going for them potentially is out of the jungle, depending on which version of Panatom we get from Sanguine. And if Hurrywin plays Yanis, he's going to be the best Yanis in the league, or even the entire world, potentially. All good that'll do him. It's Yanis still, no matter what you do with it. So I think I have to give it over to Sanguine, because largely, due in fact to that dual lane diff, I really do think that Netriud and Rongyu should be able to outshine what E United are bringing if Rongyu decides to play a team fight oriented support. When he's playing guns like
he probably won't.
Yeah,
he's gonna play like Mulan or fucking Horus or something.
Horus, Mulan, the garbage. If he plays those, I'll give it to E United. If he doesn't, if he plays something that's actually good for his team and plays to the strengths of Sanguine, which is their late game team fight, I think Sanguine can win. I'll give it to him 2-1.
Think about this one as well. You know, Hurrywin likes Janus, and Panatom's favorite god is probably Susanna, right? So, like, Susanna has a sick matchup into Janus.
It is.
It is really good. Which might make Hurrywin not play Yanis, but how Sanguine have been playing recently, I wouldn't be surprised if Hurrywin gets away with getting Persephone, and he's capable of playing that god, certainly. So I think it really does come down to the duo lane if we're going to talk about just what we can really accurately evaluate. And as far as dual lanes go, I think Sanguine's is much better.
Yeah. You said Sanguine 2-0?
2-1.
2-1, okay. Frost, how about you? Sanguine versus United.
Well, what we can accurately evaluate is that this United roster has already beaten this Sanguine roster, and it did come down to a lot of PvEing with the Yanis. It's just something about the Sanguine playstyle of always being together. It doesn't go well against a Hurrywin team, because they're just all over the map way too fast, ganging up on one person or another. I think this is the comfort match for United. I think this is something that they're okay with. They're not psyched out about. They're actually ready for it. Probably even whip out some new stuff or just try to go back for that PvE style. I think it'll be 2-0. And the Sanguine, I've also scheduled earlier for a loss to Radiance. So if that comes through, I think their mental is just going to be down in the dumps. 2-0 United.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Frost said there about United. The other thing that I'm looking into is I think we're sort of on like 2 or 3 weeks now since the roster change. And I think maybe the synergy is starting to build up with this United team. I think United is probably going to win this set. I think I'll give it to them 2-1. I think that rounds out week 12 for us. Thanks for watching the SPL Rundown this week. Huge thanks to our special guests, Zyrhoes and Myflin. Be sure to catch us next week on Smite Game at the same time, that is 3 p.m. Eastern, and to check out our YouTube, where you can catch extended cuts of my discussion with these analysts and extended cuts of my interviews with pro players. If you have any ideas for future guests that you would want to see on the show, please don't hesitate to DM me on Twitter at Apam2 or at Apam Productions. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you guys next week.